Well, hello and welcome to the West Sports Show. The fight for the Ashes may be over, but we don't stop here. Well, except for Glenn Quartermain, who's on a nice little holiday.
He does stop, yeah.
But my name's Chris Robinson, filling in for him. I'm joined by the West cricket expert, Jackson Barrett. How are you, Jacko? And how did you see the scenes of celebration as Australia wrapped up the series inside 11 days yesterday?
I would have loved to have been in Adelaide on a Sunday night.
Yeah.
I think it would have been a fair time. Down Hindley Street, I would suggest, or wherever Travis Head had organised. I think he was the spearhead of the celebrations, and it looked like they had a decent night. There are a few blokes in this Australian team that keep some receipts, and I think they might have been pulled out of pockets last night as well. A couple of cheeky digs on social media, and I'm sure there were plenty more behind the scenes as well. And Travis Head's Ron Ball shirts were excellent as well. And the fact that they had to be pre-made.
Well, this is the thing that always intrigues me. When did these things get made, and they were just presumably just kept in a box somewhere until they needed to be rolled out, right?
I would think that was well and truly pre-Ashes, right? Like, when is that man going to have time to have organised a production of them in the last few days? That would have had to have been pre-Ashes. It reminds me of Adam Zampa's ski goggles that he carted all the way to the Middle East for the T20 World Cup. But no, it looked like they had a ripping time and pretty well deserved as well. And the interesting thing around the celebrations on a somewhat more serious note is the bringing back of some Australian legends into the dressing room, which a couple of them have spoken about since, and that sounded like it meant a lot to a few guys. Justin Langer was in there, Adam Gilchrist, Mark Taylor, Jason Gillespie spoke about, it's essentially a sacred place, and you're really cautious, particularly cautious as a former player, of not invading that. Sure. So said it meant a lot, as I'm sure it would for a few of them as well, who have kind of been involved in JL's case as a coach, and then to come back, I'm sure would have been really special as well. So yeah, they looks like they gave it a good dip, but they did it in good style.
And such a sharp contrast with England and their former greats, where so much of the narrative of this series has been the former greats being critical, being against this sort of Bazball philosophy, and the playing group and the coaching staff sort of railing against that.
Yeah.
Just such a juxtaposition there. You've got the back page of the West Australian from today there with you, which proudly proclaims the death of Bazball, the obituary, if you like. Yep. Obviously a throwback to the very start of the Ashes, really. How do you feel England, before we get into the Australian changes, how do you feel England will approach these final two test matches? Obviously, very short turnaround now before Boxing Day. Do you feel like we'll see some kind of recognisable shift, or even just a little bit of movement away from that kind of Bazball? Do you think that will be curtailed somewhat, or do you feel like they might just pressure off, banged up Australia, throw caution to the wind and go, no, we're doubling down on this. We're going even harder?
It's a little bit hard to tell. I think more broadly speaking, England cricket is now at a crisis point where, as we wrote on the back page today, we won't see Bazball in Australia ever again. They don't come here for 4 years.
Sure.
Whether it's Brendan McCullum in charge or not, that won't be the way they go about it from here, because that was built towards the Ashes. It's failed. They have to now pivot and try and find another way to beat good teams in Test cricket. And those good teams are India and Australia. They haven't beaten Australia here in a single Test since 2011. So credit to them in a sense for, trying to adjust the way they go about things. This time it hasn't worked. They're going to have to reassess that. On the short-term front, it's a little bit interesting, because I don't know if this group is well enough equipped to go about it any other way. I think there's massive amounts of confusion in guys like Ben Duckett and Ollie Pope that's like really vivid in their batting, is confusion in their method. And I wrote this week that it feels a little bit like guys like Crawley, well, more so Duckett and Pope being the big two, that are kind of been told to play this way under this almost cult-like regime, then get out cheaply, get battered for it, and then watch Ben Stokes come in and strike it often 30 or 35 or 40 and kind of be this Bazball hero, whereas like clearly the evidence has now shown them over the last particularly two matches that just being a little bit more circumspect is clearly the way to go, and Test matches don't need to move at 1,000,000 miles an hour on wickets like the ones that we've seen at Brisbane and Adelaide. So I think those guys, Pope and Duckett, I'm thinking of in particular, would sit back a little bit, and I'm sure I think Ollie Pope's a good enough cricketer to play for England again at some stage, but I think the axe is coming for him in the immediate term. I think he has the right to look back and feel like he probably has been shafted a little bit. I think there's a cricketer there in Ollie Pope that has been kind of asked to play this way and do this job for the team that other guys further down the order, particularly the captain, haven't quite had to. So I think that would be a little bit difficult to reconcile for those guys. As for these two tests, I mean, personnel-wise, there isn't really much room to move. Like if they were to bring in Jacob Bethel to replace Pope at 3, I mean, he is the graduate of Bazball, right? Like he is one of the guys that was brought into this system as a really young guy and effectively a project player without almost any county experience. He has one professional 100 to his name. It's in a one-day international. He's captained England in T20s, so they rate him, but he's played 4 tests, and I just don't think they entirely know what they're getting if they pick him. And then beyond that, they would have to pick from T20 leagues. So, I mean, James Rue impressed down here. He's now in the IL T20. Rian Ahmed has test exposure. He's playing for the Hobart Hurricanes. So these guys will then have to be pulled out of white ball cricket at 3 days' notice to come and potentially play a test match. So I think because they have such little room to move in personnel, I almost think that sort of Crawley, Duckett, Pope axis in their top 3 is probably just going to have to soldier on doing what they're doing. I don't know if there's room to make radical change to the way they go about it. But I mean, the whole Bazball thing has kind of slowly been like forced out of them over the last, 9 days of cricket since Perth, I feel, and they have learnt that to even just like claw their way back into matches, they're having to change the way they go about it. So it's a little bit hard to tell, right? Like McCullum, not a huge man to twist in these sort of scenarios. So you'd think for the remainder of the series, they probably take it a similar way, but from there, it's going to take a major rethink of the way they go about it.
It's almost as if there's 100-odd years of Test cricket history that sort of shows you a bit of a blueprint about how do I go about it. Before we move on, a quick word from our friends at West Coast Hi-Fi. West Coast Hi-Fi's epic end-of-year clearance is now on with up to 50% off store-wide. That means epic savings on receivers, speakers, headphones, and more while stocks last, of course. Don't miss out. Hurry in and feel the experience with West Coast Hi-Fi. Plenty of talk about Australia's changes that's going to come over the next couple of days. Quite amazing, really. The three ins, I should say, that we saw for the 3rd test could well be the 3 outs for the 4th test. I'm talking about, obviously, Nathan Lyon, Pat Cummins, and Usman Khawaja. Let's start with the Nathan Lyon one. Obviously, a really difficult one for Australia. So not since 2011 have the Aussies been going into a home test and not had Nathan Lyon available to be picked. He's missed a couple in that time, but they've overlooked him deliberately. Obviously, that happened at Brisbane a couple of weeks ago, but he's been available basically for the past 14 years of home tests. This is a very unfamiliar situation for the selectors to find themselves in. Let's run through the candidates in terms of presuming that Australia will pick a spinner, which we'd think is highly, highly likely going into Melbourne, and of course presuming that Nathan Lyon's not fit to play, which again is looking highly, highly unlikely. Corey Rocchiccioli is your boy, WA boy, 28-year-old, yet to debut at test level. Very good Shield record this year. He's taken 20 wickets at an average of about 28. The other right-arm off-spin contender, if you want to go for the sort of like for like with Nathan Lyon, is Todd Murphy. He's played 7 test matches and has taken 10 wickets at about 24 this Shield season. Mitch Swepson, if you're going for some right-arm leg spin, has taken 21 Shield wickets, so he's the leading Shield performer this season at an average of 36 and has played 4 tests. And then Matt Kuhneman as well has test experience too. I think the most test wickets out of that bunch, 25 test wickets. He's taken 4 poles at Shield level at 36. How would you rate those 4? Put them in some kind of order for us. Obviously, Rocchiccioli is going to be the guy that we're sort of rooting for a little bit here, being in the West. How would you rate those 4 in terms of likelihood to play on Boxing Day?
In terms of likelihood to play, I'm kind of taking my guidance a little bit from Pat Cummins' lines in the press conference last night, where he spoke about how fortunate they were to have guys with test experience that can come straight in and do that job.
Gaz is pretty close to irreplaceable, but you know the ability to take breakthroughs but also control innings is really important. So it's going to be hard to replace, but you know we've got some guys who have already had a taste of international cricket, around the traps. Other guys have done really well in domestic cricket. I think it's been one of the benefits actually of the Sri Lankan tours, even West Indies, and a couple of these tours where we take a couple of spinners. You always, there's guys that can step in and you feel like it's not going to be too overawing for them.
Just the way he spoke certainly hinted towards Kuhnemann and Murphy. They really like Matt Kuhnemann, and the sense after the Sri Lanka tour earlier in the year was that Kuhnemann had jumped Todd Murphy in that kind of spin power rankings into the number 2 seed behind Lyon. He has not played a lot of Shield cricket in the first part of this season. Todd Murphy hasn't played a heap of Shield cricket either. He missed the first part of the season. Doug Warren was bowling spin for Victoria. But they do know what they're getting out of Murphy. So for me, that kind of felt like the guy that Cummins was hinting at, or the two guys that Cummins was hinting at. Swepson's the dark horse. It felt like the forgotten man of Australian cricket after he was left off a couple of subcontinent tours, but has been a steady enough performer over there as well. I think a leg spinner would be a decent sized change of tact for Australia. Sure. So while he is the top performer, he has had a really good Shield season. He's probably just the outsider for me there. Rocchiccioli, I've watched play a lot of cricket over the last few years, and he would be my pick for a couple of reasons. One of them is that clearly Nathan Lyon is coming towards the end of his Test career. He has shown with his words and his actions in Adelaide that he is desperate to keep playing. That's kind of the impression that I get anyway. But naturally, this guy did a calf in the 23 Ashes and has now done a hamstring in the 25 Ashes, and Australia are going to have to start looking towards the future.
Mm-hmm. It's 38.
He's 38. Rocchiccioli is the long-term solution on home soil. I firmly believe that and have for quite a while. He has the Nathan Lyon-like ability to control innings, and he's done that in that like fabulous Western Australian side that we've seen over the last half decade. That's been him. He's had outstanding results at the WACA using the bounce. He's revolutionised the way that spin bowling is used at the WACA. He's used with the new ball. He often gets the new ball after 10 overs in Shield games because he's able to extract that bounce. He's able to bowl for long periods, and he's able to have the quicks kind of rotate around him, which is exactly what Lyon does. And his stock ball is really repeatable, which is the whole thing around Nathan Lyon. He, when you compare him to Todd Murphy as well, he's kind of that taller, really gets over the ball sort of spinner, and that just feels more repeatable on Australian wickets. Whereas for me, Murphy being more that like side spin probably needs a little bit of help on spinning decks. And to be fair, he'll probably get that in Melbourne and Sydney. Melbourne turned late last year. I remember Nathan Lyon bowled us to victory, and traditionally there's a little bit for the spinners in Sydney. But I think if they're looking long term now that the series is sewn up, I think it needs to be Rocchiccioli. He's had an excellent first class record. He's played almost 50 games. He's won 3 Sheffield Shields. He's averaging 30. He's pretty self-deprecating with his batting, but he can hold a stick. He has a Shield final 50. So, the lengthening of Australian batting compared to England has been a talking point through the first part of the series. Like, he probably comes in and bats in line spot, bats in 10, and will do it pretty well. So I'm an advocate for Rocchiccioli. I do think the impression I got out of Cummins the other night was that they're probably looking towards Murphy, just the way he spoke about the Test experience. But remember, England got after Todd Murphy after Nathan Lyon went down in the 23 Ashes as well, to the point where he ended up missing a Test. They ended up going without a recognised spinner in that series towards the end of it. So, yeah, it's Rocchiccioli for me. In terms of likelihood, I'd probably have Murphy in one. But obviously, as West Australians, would love to see a third one in there.
Yeah, so the heart says Rock.
Yep.
But in terms of what you actually think, it's Murphy.
Yeah, the head says Murphy.
From Kuhnemann, then Rocchiccioli, then Swepson in the 4. Is that
sort
of the way
I'm just taking that guidance from the way Cummins spoke.
Sure.
And also Murphy was picked to play Australia A ahead of Rocchiccioli earlier this summer as well. So there's that as well. Yeah,
a couple of little hints there as well. Pat Cummins, speaking of hints, gave a few hints about his own availability. He spoke like a man who was probably 99% certain that he won't be playing in Melbourne. As I said, a very short turnaround between the night of the 21st and the morning of the 26th. Is this as simple as Michael Neser comes straight back in? Do you make a case of Brendan Doggett? And also, from a WA point of view, Jai Richardson.
How many can we get in?
Yes.
Can Bancroft and Whiteman open the batting?
Does Jai Richardson, do you expect him to come into the camp and therefore hurt his Scorchers availability when it comes to Boxing Day?
I think there's a decent chance that Richardson is around the mark. I think I know that the long-term planning has always been for a fit again Jai Richardson to play a part in this series. Remember that he had shoulder surgery in January of this year after consultation with Andrew McDonald and Pat Cummins, which strongly hinted that they wanted him to be a part of this series, and that decision was made to be available for this series. That timeline was pushed back a little bit, so he wasn't quite available for the start. He's now played for the CA11, for Australia A, so there are overs under his belt. He's played a game for the Scorchers the other night and looked pretty good, apart from a costly no ball that they'd come to regret. But he also trained with the squad in Adelaide as well and looked good, looked fast, looked strong, and was challenging Australia's batters. So I think he is certainly in the mix. Clearly, you've got to recognise the form of Michael Neser and the long-term contribution to Australian cricket. I think I said this on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, but he was on the 2019 Ashes tour. Sure. Michael Neser. He's been around the mark for a long time.
And been very, very good when given the chance.
Very good. Yeah, of course, 5 wickets in the second test in Brisbane. So to rank these guys, I think it's probably Neser 1, maybe Richardson 2. Richardson feels sort of the like for Cummins, I guess. He has also performed very well in his limited test opportunities. He's played 3 tests today, has an Ashes fifer to his name. And then Doggett as well. I think Doggett did a job, but I think the long-term planning has always been for Richardson to be ahead of Doggett in the race there. So that'd be how I rank the 3.
And then the batting question is the other one. So obviously presuming Steve Smith is right to come back, he plays, of course. And then that really leaves sort of a 2-man battle between Usman Khawaja and Josh Inglis. Yeah. Bit of a week to forget for Josh Inglis, not through a massive fault of his own, but the whole situation around Steve Smith and sort of reopening that door for Khawaja. And credit to Khawaja, obviously had that early chance in Adelaide, but then made the most of it. 122 runs for the test. He was one of only 2 players, along with Alex Carey, who was man of the match, to get 40 in both innings. Yep. So he certainly made his case there. And then Josh Inglis, conversely, obviously we know that century in his debut test innings, but since then he's gone 0, 5, 12, 23, 32 and 10.
And they're your lotto numbers for the night.
Yes, at an average of 13.7. So which way do you see this decision going? Again, presuming Steve Smith is fit, do you think they're taking Khawaja or do you think they stick with Josh Inglis in that middle order?
It's really hard to get a read here. I've also seen some fairly abstract suggestions here where there's talk of Green flipping to 7 and Khawaja staying at 5 and Inglis going out. I've even seen Weatherald out, Khawaja to the top and Green to 7 and Inglis.
I think Weatherald would be pretty stiff to be.
I think we can overthink this a little bit. I think there's a risk there. I find it really difficult to get a read on what they'll actually do. But what I will say is Khawaja looked great. Like I only had him in my first Test 11 by virtue of not wanting to have 2 fresh openers. I didn't have him in my second Test 11 before he was injured. I certainly didn't have him in my third.
Sure.
And
neither did Australia until about 45 minutes before the toss.
Neither did Australia, and I don't think anyone really foresaw him coming in and doing a proper job in the middle order. Like good batting judges commented on the fact that when he was defending, he was getting into nice positions and his stroke play was really commanding and he was just a little bit more figuratively rather than literally on the front foot with his batting and was really assertive. So I was hugely impressed by Khawaja. I find this really line ball call, Khawaja and Inglis. I would like Inglis to get a go outside of the number 7 spot. I think you're always going to battle contributing to the game in the number 7 role. So I find that a little bit funny for him. I think given that he's there, that could be the sign that that Khawaja retains his place and maybe Green flips to 7. I mean, Green in himself is kind of the other selection quandary. He bowled maybe the best spell of his Test career, which I think will probably get him to Boxing Day, but his batting's becoming an issue. Even when he did make runs in Brisbane, he had that dismissal where he backed away and tried to slap Cast through the offside that was pretty widely panned. And he didn't look great with the stick in this one either. So I think that's another kind of dicey element to this, the fact that they may have a conversation around Cam Green as part of this. So hard to get a read, pretty non-committal from me. I'd lean towards Inglis, but just given that the series is sewn up and that we don't expect Kawaja to go on beyond the Ashes, but he certainly did his chances no harm.
Before we continue, a quick word from our friends at Automasters, and seeing is believing with Automasters Auto Cam. The future of vehicle service and repair is here. Cutting-edge technology brings the service experience to the palm of your hand. Real-time video with a real-time report on your car sent direct to you from your Automasters technician. You'll see any problem firsthand, along with the detailed explanation and recommendation from your service advisor. How good? Switch to Automasters AutoCam, call 1300 Automasters. Jacko, a quick BBL corner word before we head out of here. The Perth Scorchers, we've lauded their new batting, powerful, stacked top 7, and it was on full show at the Gabba on Friday night. And then the flip side of that was they couldn't defend 250. What did you see from that game, and what needs to change with that bowling and fielding unit in particular?
Have you ever seen a game like it?
No.
I've genuinely never seen anything like it. To start with the positive note, the hitting was remarkable. Like the Allen and Connolly combination there was incredible. Connolly, we flagged it last week, but is going into the stratosphere in this BBL. That's my not very outlandish tip, is that he's just going to explode over the next few weeks. That shot, my favourite shot was this one back over Shaheen Afridi's head. Like, this guy is like a weldy left arm quick in white ball cricket, and Connolly just got after him
with disdain.
The Allen over off Kuhnemann can't have done his test chances any good. I think he was probably stitched up by his skipper a little bit, having to try and protect a leg side short. So I don't think they captained incredibly well. The issue now clearly going forward for the Scorchers, as you say, is the bowling and basically how to cobble together 20 overs of okay stuff. Like, this has never been an issue for the Scorchers before. They have just been relentless. They've now got a couple of guys that we know are going to be cricketers, like Marley Beardman, who was left out of this one, and Brodie Couch. It's just trying to navigate the tournament as they gain a little bit of experience. So I wouldn't expect Richardson to play on Boxing Day, because I would think that if he's not in the 11, he will be in the squad. I think he will be recalled to be a part of that. That call you'd think will come pretty quickly, probably in the next 24 hours. So I don't think he'll be there Boxing Day. Then the options from the outside are Marley Beardman, who played the first game, got a little bit of tap. I think my fear at this stage of Marley's career he's going to be an excellent cricketer, but we saw similar with Lance Morris, is just the ability to come back into contests once things don't go their way early, particularly if they don't go their way with the new ball, then having to fight back against set batters and potentially power surges and those sort of elements later in the innings. Matt Kelly is another one. He's got the experience. His Big Bash form isn't stunning by any means over the last kind of 2 years since the championship. But I would probably look at recalling him just for a bit of a steady hand, a bit of a been there, done that, particularly bowling at Optus, a guy that can, rather than blast you out with pace, can hit a length and protect those like deep pockets, or have guys hit to those deep pockets rather, and protect the short straight boundaries. So I'd lean towards Kelly, but it is becoming a bit of an issue. I mean, Brodie Couch was excellent in the first game, really battled in the second. All those guys battled in the second. I mean, the conditions late in Brisbane, it was skidding onto the bat, but it's a genuine night game Boxing Day as well in Perth, which we don't always get. So that kind of second innings due element will be a factor on Friday night as well. So that's something to factor in too. I still like the Scorchers as a side, basically because if you can score 250 a couple of times, you're going to defend it more times than you're not. So I think there's a team there. I think there's a good side, but they will have to figure out the bowling. I would say they're itching for full Richardson availability and David Payne to come from the ILT20 as well. So towards kind of after the first week of January, I think that could be a steadier looking bowling.
David Payne looking like he's posting some pretty nice numbers over there as well. Just a really early BBL trend watch. 8 games so far. 8 times we've seen win the toss and field first and chase. And 6 of the 8 games, the chasing side has pulled off the chase. So that's certainly the way that things seem to be going in the Big Bash right now. Jacko, we'll let you get out of here. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Matt.
And to our listeners, thanks so much for tuning in. And remember to stay tuned to The West for all your cricket news and analysis. We'll talk to you again soon.